Hello everyone. Time really flies, and now we are entering week number 12, the final week for the semester. I really hope you actually learned something from me this semester. And then, as usual, I'm going to talk about your final weeks of lecture, week number 12, about Java API. And then I would like to also present some slides to wrap up the course. Maybe just to go over very briefly about what we have done what we have covered in the course, and what you can look forward to in your second year. And then I will give some personal advice about how you may actually want to strengthen your understanding and also your skills about programming before you enter the second year. Maybe there's something you can do in the summer. Okay, that's what I would like to do in the final introduction and wrap-up video for this course. All right, it's very sad. It's only 12 weeks for the course, but we have to say goodbye at some point. All right. Anyway, so let's now first of all talk about the week number 12. And the final week, we're going to talk about Java API, how you can use Java library classes. So far, in all your labs and also in all your programming tests, we actually forbid you to actually use any library classes. The main justification really is that for you as a beginner, you are really meant to know how to build things from scratch, rather than reusing some stuff or some methods that have been built by other Java developers. When you become more experienced and more advanced, those routine jobs may be substituted by some other library methods. However, when you are learning about learning to program, I would suggest personally, and also according to my judgment, you should really try to minimize the use of Java library classes. Whenever you can build something from scratch by yourself, why not? Do it and take it as a learning opportunity for you to really sharpen your skills for programming. So that'll be my humble advice. How about that? All right, so for week number 12, let's take a look. It will be the normal lecture load, but it's actually about 90 minutes, one hour and a half to really cover the Java API. So we'll do 3 case studies for this lecture. Okay, let me just tell you very quickly. So here we got the first part of the lecture. We're going to learn about why we want to use Java API. So you will see a little bit more detailed arguments about why we want to use Java API. When you get much more advanced later, so you do not really want to reinvent the wheel for the basic stuff. You just want to reuse whenever possible. However, for now, as a beginner, you still really want to train yourself by building everything from scratch whenever you can, right? So we talk about Java API, we talk about method headers, and also quick review about static versus non-static methods that we spoke about already, right? In order for you to really use a library method, you really need to understand what the headers are, and also whether the methods you're calling are really static versus non-static. Otherwise, you wouldn't know how to use them properly. And then the next 3 units for the final lecture, we actually got 3 case studies for you. So the first one is about using the math class over here. So math class is a very special class where every method in the class is actually static. So in some way, it's very much like the utilities class that we learned about for your earlier labs and also programming test. Okay, and then after the math case study, we actually do 2 more collection class, so-called. So one is about array list, and the other one is about hash table. So we'll do these 2. Okay, and then I would suggest when you for this week, I think it would be more recommended that you actually study the lecture first before you actually go on to the weekly tutorial videos, because in the lecture, I actually try to cover the basics to really about how you can manipulate, especially array list and also hash table, and a little bit coverage about generic parameters. So that'll be very important intuition you want to get before you can use it. On the other hand, in the weekly tutorial videos, week number 12, I try to use the array list and also hash table to build some interesting app called Birthday Book. And I kind of assume over there in the tutorial video that you already got some basic knowledge for the library collection classes, array list and hash table. Right? I also suggested some extra tutorial videos. If you go on to your week number 12 Java tutorials, you will see the links to the extra tutorial, and those will cover even more example about how you can manipulate hash map and also array list. Hash map and hash table are pretty much the same library classes, but at this moment, you don't have to distinguish between them. Whatever you learn in one, you can also apply that to the other as well. All right. And for the study materials, as usual, you can look at the annotated notes to study that. And also, we got weekly tutorial videos. We already released week number 11 on time last week. So hopefully you already started going over that. So I think week number 11 was the second part for two-dimensional arrays, about how you can program utility methods, a variety of utility methods for two-dimensional array. And then for week number 12, so that one is really about building the birthday book application, right? I'll just mention that quickly. So it's called birthday book application. The same application can be implemented using either array list as version 1 and also using a hash table as version 2. So you can see the comparison, also detail tracing over there. So hopefully that will definitely help. So you can also build your own application using the library classes. All right. Okay, so for the slides, you can look at lecture 6 about API, and also at the end of the current video for the introduction and wrap up, I will actually also present some slides for wrapping up the course, just by briefly enumerating and going over the topics that we have covered in this course. Okay, all right, and then the usual lecture site, and later on, so after the semester ends, there will be about 10 days, roughly about 10 days or a week before your actually final exam. So I will try to schedule some, maybe one or two, maybe at least two exam review sessions to maybe answer your questions and hopefully to help you get better prepared for your comprehensive exam. So all the information, all the recordings, all the materials will still be posted on the lecture site, right? You can just check the site regularly, right? All right, very quickly about the learning objectives and also work items for the final week. So for the learning objectives, we learned about why we're using Java API, right? It's mainly for substituting the routine tasks. Rather than building from scratch, you can actually use them actually by saving some efforts. However, as a beginner, it's not so recommended you actually use Java API so much. You should really try to build your own application from scratch using maybe primitive array or 2D arrays that we spoke about. Okay. Method headers, the name of the method, parameters, return type, etc. Right? And also static versus non-static is really important. And then we will talk about the three classes in Java API. We got math, and also we got array list, and also we got hash table. Okay. What about the milestone, the work items for your final week? So you are going to complete lab number 8. It's the second part of your Android mobile computing lab. And that one there has been a release last week. So you already got 1 week gone up to now. If you haven't started, please do so. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to meet the deadline. And lab number 8 was actually quite an interesting game about tic-tac-toe, right? By using the 2D arrays to program the game. It will give you some basic flavor about how you can build a game, right? Of course, beyond this course, you can feel free to maybe try to model some more complicated game. For example, you can definitely try to do this as an extra exercise. I'll only mention this verbally. One is called Sudoku. Right? Sudoku is another interesting board game you can actually try to use 2D array to implement. Another one would be something called Pack Solitaire. Okay, you can also search for that. Okay, I should really write it down. Sudoku. I hope I'm spelling this correctly. And then another one will be is called Pack Solitaire. Okay, so these are the two challenging side projects that you may want to explore yourself, maybe over the summer before you enter the second year. That will be very nice opportunity for you to really put everything together into a single side projects. And then we also got your written test number 3 happening in the final week, and also for Java tutorial videos week number 11 and also week number 12, and the lecture series week number 12, right? Okay, so these are the work items, still regular. Okay, like we have been following the same pattern throughout the semester. All right, so that's about what you have to do for week number 12. And since it's now the final week, I would like to just do some little bits of slideshow, not taking too much time, but I really want to wrap up the course just to let you know how much you really have studied for. Right? You really want to take the opportunity now to really pause and think about what you have learned and try to think about how they might lead you beyond this course. You should always keep reflecting the materials you have learned, right? Once you finish your first year, in the second year, things will definitely get more intensive, and also more extensive. So you really want to make sure you got a solid foundation. All right, let me now present some slides very quickly. I'll try to wrap up, everything. Okay, so now why this course? I'm just repeating one slide which I showed to you when on day one when I presented to you the course syllabus. So now this slide actually might make more sense to you. Let's review that very quickly. So I said before, this course is really about strengthening your computational thinking, right? For you as doing a CS major, ultimately you want to graduate as a computer scientist, and it's really important for you to know how to think in terms of a computation, right? However, there are two levels you may want to think about. Level number one is just about coding, right? If you always just dive into the coding right away without thinking too much. At the second level, which is about the logical rationale. So that's really something I have kept illustrating in my tutorial videos and also in my lectures. So every time when you are coding, always think about what's really the conceptual sketch that you're really trying to implement in your Java code. And this applies not just to Java, but later on you learn about C, you learn about something called Prolog for logical programming, and also maybe Python as well, right? So it's really important for you to always focus more on above the level of code, about the logical justification of your code, and also how you do tracing. And something we really emphasize for almost every week is about how you trace your code. Either you can trace on debugger or you can trace on paper. Both are important. I really hope that's something you can take away from me for this term. Then I'll be very happy. All right, and then being able to think abstractly, especially thinking in terms of the logical rationale, rather than simply just trying to trials and errors. One thing you really want to avoid when you are coding is to just by doing trials and errors. So if this code doesn't work, why don't I simply modify this a little bit, and would that work? If it doesn't work, maybe I'll try to modify that, even though I don't know why I would need to modify that, right? And then eventually, once you get something that works, however, you simply don't know why the code actually ends up working. So that's not really the path you want to take. You should always follow through logical reasoning. So coding is really about logical reasoning, not just about trials and errors. That's something I want to emphasize once more before you graduate from this course. Okay, so I included some link about how people do interviews at Google. So basically, you will be presented a problem, and then your potential supervisor in the future, they might simply just give you some problem, maybe verbally, and then you're going to solve it in front of them on a whiteboard. And then, even though you don't have the compiler to support you about syntax error or type errors, but you will be expected to write code right away on the whiteboard. So that's something you also want to get prepared. Maybe in your second year, when you want to look for a part-time job, you want to look for internship, or later you want to look for whatever opportunities, you definitely want to have such skills about doing solving problems under pressure. Of course, that's why we got programming tests for you. All right, that's a slide I just want to mention to you and revisit that just to emphasize the point. It's really about thinking above the level of code. Right, that's really important. You want to have a logical mind. All right, let's now go over very quickly the topics that we have covered in this course. And it may not be exhaustive, at least those are the most important topics I can think of, right? So the first category, the first thing is about procedural programming in Java. We learn about primitive types, integer, boolean, character, and also variable assignments about copying the value. And remember, when variable assignment is adapted to the context of object-oriented programming, it will be about copying addresses. So that's why we have to visualize pointers, the arrows pointing around in different places, right? And also we talk about numerical casting and also coercion. What's the difference, right? That's something you want to know before you write your final exam. And then we learn about Boolean expressions, true or false, and also logical operator, conjunction, disjunction, negation. And then we learn about short circuit evaluation, and the two applications that we did in the lecture were the about division and also about array indexing. So these are the two scenarios you must be very familiar with, hopefully. Right? Otherwise, you get a review. Short circuit evaluation is a very important programming phenomenon you have to be aware of. Otherwise, you wouldn't know why your code either works or doesn't work. And then we learned about conditionals and loops, right? And we actually dive much deeper into writing complex conditional loops. So this might be some continuation from your either 1012 or 1015 in the last semester, right? And then we learned about one-dimensional arrays in Java and also two-dimensional arrays in Java. I would say try to explore yourself further in the 2D arrays. We only managed to actually do one single your lab number 8, about the tic-tac-toe game using 2D arrays. And also we did 2 weeks of the Java tutorial videos for 2D array. That's the best I could offer. But I would say beyond this course, you really should maybe try to search for more problems or maybe side project to implement 2D arrays to strengthen your understanding. That's what I would recommend. I'll give you some recommendation at the end of this wrap-up session. All right. Thing number 2 is really the main learning outcome for this course, but it cannot really happen unless you actually master the previous one, of course, the procedural part. So now the object-oriented programming in Java, what did we learn? So we learned about classes, attributes, objects, reference data types. Is really about storing addresses for the objects in the memory. And then we learned about methods. We got constructors, accessor, mutator, and also helper method. For what? For eliminating the smell of your code. It's a very important software design concept to really make sure your code does not smell, meaning that it does not contain any duplicates, right? And also we learned about the dot notation, how you can navigate between classes using dot notation, and also context objects using the this keyword, and also how you can call the methods. And we did lots of tracing by tracing the method calls on different context objects in the tutorials and also in the lecture. Right, and also we learned about reference aliasing. It's a very natural phenomenon for OOP, and it's really important for you to know how to trace the code when you actually got reference aliasing. And then we got Java API, which we're going to study this week, but we're going to look at math. And the scanner class is something that we have been using since week number 1. So hopefully that one is also a plus for you. And also array list, and also hash table, which you will learn about in the final week of lecture. And then for the keywords that we learned, you can look at final, this, and static, and make sure you know what each individual keyword really is supposed to serve before you actually write the exam. All right, finally, we got another thing over here, which is more about the practical skill for your programming ability. It's about using some integrated development environments. In our case, we use Eclipse IDE. So what did we learn? We learned about compile time versus runtime. That's what we said in the very first lecture, right? So syntax error, type error, and also logical error, right? And also we learned about different ways for you to really test your program, different ways to see the programming effects of your program. The one that you might find the most visual will be console application using the main method, where we have done a lot since lab number 1. And also mobile app, so that's the main theme for your lab number 7 and 8. So that one assumes about OOP knowledge. That's why we did it a little bit in the final stage for this course. But mobile app is just another way to see the visual effects of your program. And however, the third one, which we also have been doing since the first week, is for JUnit tests and also assertions. So that would be the way to go beyond the first year. Okay. And then also setting the breakpoints and debugger. That's also very important, right? We learned about breakpoints and debugger right in the beginning of the course. Whenever you really struggle, and when Jackie is not beside you, and when the TAs are not beside you, nobody's around you to help. And who can you help? Who can help you? Yourself, by using breakpoints and debugger. That's a very important message you want to carry on. Okay. All right. Before I say that, I think yes, really focus more on the JUnit tests and also assertions. That's really something that will help you in a long run. Okay. All right. Beyond this course, I have some suggestion about how you may actually want to study further. If you want to, maybe you wouldn't take the 2030 in the summer. Maybe you'll take it in the fall. In that case, you may want to take advantage of the few months in the summer. Maybe you want to strengthen your skills a little bit further. I have some suggestion over here. Okay, feel free to consider that. Number 1, if you want to really see what 2030 is about, you can click on this link over here. I'll show you very quickly. So this is the last iteration of the last instance of the 2030 I taught. It was back in fall 2019. It's still very recent. So I got a complete course recording for lectures and also iPad notes, all the example code, and also some example tests over there, and also programming test review session, and also exam review session. And so it's a really complete set of resources over there. If you want to study ahead about 2030, feel free. I might be teaching 2030, maybe not in the summer, but maybe in the fall 2021. I might be, I don't know yet, but if I'm there, so maybe I'll see some of you over there. We'll see. All right, so that will be the first recommended sources I have for you. And the second one is about the website. Maybe I mentioned that quickly in the Q&A. It's called LeetCode. So this is a website where they provided lots of coding interview problems. So you don't necessarily have to sign up as a member. If you want to, feel free. Otherwise, I think you can still get some free resources over there to see what challenging programming problems you can solve. So that's definitely some site study you can actually look into. I think if you want to get access to maybe some companies coding interview problems like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, then you have to pay. But it's kind of up to you, right? I'm not really advertising for that. I'm just saying there's a good website over there. Okay. All right, let's now go on to the second recommendation. So this one is a little bit more advanced. So this is a textbook that you will eventually use anyway in the third year. So in third year, there's a 3101, EECS1022, Introduction to Algorithms. So that's the standard textbook. So you might just want, you might eventually have to purchase that anyway for your study. So I would suggest, I think you're ready, right? You shouldn't really wait until you actually have to take the course and then you buy the textbook. You may just want to consider getting a copy of yourself for the book, and then this is what I suggest you would do. Okay, so the textbook is really organized in a way that's really data structure by data structure, like a tree, maybe like a tree, graph, list, and etc. Data structure by data structure, algorithm by algorithm, and I would suggest for each one of them, number one, you want to understand the math analysis, right? Remember we said you want to think above the code level. You want to understand logical rationale. I think in that respect, the textbook is very well written. Okay, do that first. And then they have something called a pseudocode. It's not exactly something that's directly executable. It's neither C, Java, or Python, right? It's simply some pseudocode. It's just some informal sketch of the solution. You can read it, just get some idea about how the problem should be solved, and then you'll go ahead and translate it into Java code. So that will be a very valuable exercise for you. And since we have seen so many examples for writing JUnit tests, so I would suggest you also try to write and pass JUnit tests about the data structure or algorithm you're gonna practice. So this is a very thick book, so it's not possible for you to read the entire book over the summer. I don't think that's possible. However, I think it would be very nice for you to start some steady and also consistent exercise from this book. If you want to start, now would be a very perfect time for you to do so, since now you move on to the second year. All right, and finally, I'd like to bring a final message to you. And then what you have learned in 1022, I really hope I have built some reasonable foundation for you. So when you get to the second year, if I'm not your instructor again, hopefully you can still get along very well with the challenging materials. So that will be assumed in 2030. And then do not abandon Java during the break. So it's such a long break in the summer. If you're not taking any courses, I would suggest really try to really consider doing some side projects, doing some extra practice. For example, like the one I suggested. Don't waste your time really in the summer. It's quite a long time. And then when we return to the campus, come by my office and say hi. So I haven't seen a single face of you throughout the semester. It's a difficult time. It's a very special time for the pandemic. However, once we go back, I would say just drop by my office and tell me that you actually studied with me in winter 2021. I'll be very happy to chat with you. Okay? And for those of you who might want to speak up your mind, either you like or dislike my teaching, as I said, I did my best. If that really help you, if I really help your learning, please fill in the survey and let the school know. If you really don't think I'm useful for helping your learning, also I will encourage you to also speak up. in the course survey, and the school should also know as well. All right, I would like to take the final opportunity to thank every one of you for taking the journey of learning Java with me this term. I really enjoy it. I really hope you did as well. And then all the best to you. And then just come by and say hi. All right, take care, and then I'll talk to you later.